Good evening, Chatham. Welcome to the February 11, 2025 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing no such notification, I'll proceed pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491 #, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity Channel 1072, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of the meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Before I start the meeting, I just want to note the passing of a lifelong Cape resident and Chatham native, Jeffrey Bremner, who was, among many of his other talents and accomplishments, the inventor, if you will, or the starter of the recycling program at the transfer station, and a longtime employee out there. And if we could just observe his passing for a moment of silence. Thank you. With that, I will establish a quorum. We'll start with Mr. Nicastro, who is online this evening.
Present.
Mr. Schell is present. Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Dykens?
Present.
And Mr. Metters?
Present.
We have a relatively shorter agenda this evening. We have one set of minutes, January 7. We have public announcements and agenda requests. We have a public hearing with regard to the installation of a handhole at Bucks Creek Road. And we also have the weekly presentation of the water report from the DPW director. Next will be public comments on the business agenda, and then finally the business agenda consists of a number of use of town property and other related licenses that we are being applied for. The Eldridge Garage parking lot and Visitors Center electric vehicle public charging station policy and fees is next, and then finally we have the fiscal year 2026 budget review of educational assessments for the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School budget and the Monmouth Regional School District budget. With that, I will take any comments or a motion on the minutes of February 7.
Motion to approve the minutes of January 7, 2025.
Second.
Any comments, Mr. Dykens?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 5, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph up, started, there were concerns expressed about combining programming at the community center by some members of the COA BOD Board of Directors. Then the next sentence just doesn't belong there. Administrator Whalen noted that this would be aggressively put to bid to adhere to the one-year construction estimate. So that just needs to go somewhere else, Kath. It's just not in the right place. And then just have one nit, stupid little nit, misspelling on page 6, third full paragraph down, second line of that third full paragraph. Starting, he provided comments about the shared space at the community center. Not a big deal, but just a D on share.
Good catch. You're reading these
Thank you,
carefully.
Mr. Shell.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Close reading, close reading.
Mr. Nicastro, I think he's out ahead of us with the careful reading of the minutes.
Yes, I think so. I just on page 6, and maybe you caught this, Mr. Chairman, I don't remember. The paragraph up at the top, there's something missing at the end. It's just, it's stated yes, but indicated that it would cause,
The whole phrase.
we don't,
Yeah, I actually, I did, Dean, thanks, and then I gave these to Kathy. Michael Barry was the person making the comment in the third, and then Robin Zebrad, I think her name is misspelled. And then I had one other on page, you picked it up. So with that, I'll take, unless there are any others, I'll take we have a motion and a second. Mr. Nicastro.
aye.
Mr. Shell says aye. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dyken?
Aye.
And Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is public announcements and agenda requests. Do we have anything from the board? Seeing none of those, we have one I see here in the room from the public. Please introduce yourself if you would.
Hi, I'm Lauren Arcabano from the Chatham Conservation Foundation, and I'm here to ask the Select Board to please declare April 21st through 26th as Earth Week. The foundation, along with a number of partners, will be once again celebrating Earth Day through Arbor Day with townwide events, including a townwide cleanup. So we would like you to please support that effort.
Thank you. We'll put that on the agenda. I'm sure we can fit it in fairly conveniently, fairly soon. Thank you for that. Any others? Do we have anybody online? Oh, Shauna, sorry.
Good evening, Shauna Neely, your Communications Manager and Community Engagement Coordinator. I would like to request the board add an item to a future agenda to discuss ways that they might expand their efforts in reaching a broader spectrum of the community. As you all know, there are people who are very comfortable coming to your meetings, have the time and the capacity to do so, comfortable with the process and standing up here at the podium to offer you input, their ideas and thoughts. But I think we also need to, and also I know that you're all approached outside of public meetings as well, as people who are familiar with you know you might approach you at the library or the market. But there are people who aren't comfortable with the process and aren't currently engaged, and may not, with all due respect, recognize you if they come upon you in the public, or if they do know who you are, aren't comfortable because they don't know you personally in making that approach. So I was just hoping that you would consider on a future agenda discussing and perhaps creating some opportunities to be introduced to and meet with and hear from those individuals, the residents of the community that aren't currently engaged, whether it's a work or family obligation, that they just aren't able to do so on our schedule. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a very good idea. I'd like to have that conversation. So thank you for that. Anything else? Do we have anybody online? Okay. We are moving then to a public hearing. Could I ask you to read the notice, please, Shireen?
Certainly. Town of Chatham Select Board Public Hearing Notice. The Select Board will hold a public hearing at 5:30 PM on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, to consider a petition from NSTAR Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy to install a 30-foot plus or minus of 3-inch conduit from proposed handhole 189 over H1A to customer installed handhold at 14 Bucks Creek. The public is welcome to attend the meeting in person or participate via the link in the meeting's posted agenda. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Sign the Select Board.
Thank you. Do we have someone from,
Marissa.
Yeah, please, yeah, Marissa, please, go ahead, welcome.
Thank you very much, Marissa Jackson with the Rights and Permits Department at Eversource. So currently along Bucks Creek Road, we have an existing pole that's 189/1. And what we're asking to do is install one handhole at the bottom of that pole and run 30 feet approximately of 3-inch conduit across the roadway. And this is to accommodate a request for the customer located at 14 Bucks Creek. So currently existing, they have overhead service and have asked us to run it underground for them. So that being said, I'd be more than happy to address any questions if there are any.
The only question I had was that apropos the conversation we had the last time, I note the email from Mr. Faley regarding the fact that this will not jeopardize plowing on Bucks Creek Road. I'm going to assume that is sort of addressing the question that we had the last time, which was making sure that somebody from the town had examined this and felt that it was appropriate to be in front of us. Not really a question, a comment, unless somebody has a difference of opinion from that. Mr. Nacastro.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no problem with the select board granting this. This is a public hearing, we'll hear from the public, but this is a private way. And the town really has no jurisdiction on it, and I'm puzzled as to why the utility company is coming before the town rather than relying on the general laws. Mass General Laws, Chapter 187, Section 5, permits an abutter on a private way to install utility lines on it or under it. And I wondered if you had checked with the your legal counsel on that point.
Certainly. What we do is check the road list on the website. Would you like me to check that now? We typically check
not necessarily. I mean, the DPW director says that this is a private way.
Okay. My
And so,
apologies. I wasn't aware of that.
And you know, that's what he says in his memo. He says Bucks Creek Road is a private road, and the Department of Public Works has no jurisdiction over private roads. We do plow them. So, I mean, I think the town, I have no problem with the select board voting to give you this, but I don't think it's a grant that really has much meaning if this is indeed a private road. And if under, as you apparently know, if you run a private road, the property owner has a right. That's what the statute says. I don't know how that's implemented in practice with the utility companies. You would know that. I do not. But I really wanted to point that out. Anyway,
Thank you.
I don't think it causes any injury if the select board votes to do this.
Mr. Matters?
Anyway.
Actually, I'm going to follow up on Dean's comment, because I was actually approached kind of a similar question. I'm like, this is the private way, you know, the individual asked me, like, what is the process, you know, because you guys seem to be doing a lot of these lately, so which we kind of have. So to Dean's point, if this is a private way, I don't know if there's any harm, but I guess the question is there any harm? I mean, are we doing something, I mean, it seems benign enough, but I guess the question is are we comfortable doing this? Or should we just take no action because we really don't have any authority? I guess that's the question.
I'll take the other side of this just to make sure that it's not easy. I'd rather know when the utility company is coming into Chatham and doing work like this. And I take Dean's point, and he obviously is fully aware of what the statutory authorization is for an owner of property on a private way is. So it's not as if we have any ability to presumably to say, don't do it. If I'm accepting your implied legal opinion, Dean, but by the same token, if we say we're not going to deal with this, I think the utility company will say, we'll let you know when it's a public way, but not otherwise, and I'd rather know when they're here, period. So that's how I feel about it, but Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I understand the legal argument, I do now, but I think it's also appropriate that neighbors notified that there's gonna be action there, whether, it doesn't say what day, but, so they know that, yeah, we've looked at this, and there's no harm to the passage or the plowing of that road, and they're informed what's going on. So I have no issue voting it whatsoever. Thanks.
Any other comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Nacastro.
Yeah, I'll just say, the reason I'm aware of that statute is because I once had a case involving that years ago. But this is what it says. I'll just read the pertinent phrasing. The owner or owners of real estate abutting on a private way who have by deed existing rights of ingress and egress upon it shall have the right by implication to place, install, or construct the utility lines. So you could have a private way where the owner does not have those rights, does not have the right of egress. Depends on how it was laid out historically. So in the records. And your point, Mike, is well taken, and Jeff agrees that it's very helpful for the town administration and select board to know.
Well,
what's going
and I
on.
think Jeff makes the additional point that the neighbors would like to know as well.
I do have to echo that. The point of the neighbors knowing, because that's always kind of been an issue on other topics.
Yeah, yeah. So I lost track. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
It's a public hearing.
I do that every time, yes. Any comments from the public? Apparently not. So I got away with it. We have a motion and a second on the table. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. Thank you very much, Marissa.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Sorry about that.
That's all right, no worries.
Thank you.
Mr. Faley, we have a report from you, as usual, every week.
Seems like every week, but it's actually every month.
Oh, there you go. I seem to have seen a lot of you lately here.
So Rob Faley, Director of Public Works, thank you for having me. So yeah, just a brief summary of the January pumpage report. So for training field wells 5 and 8, as you can see in the pictures, the masons are busy setting the concrete block walls. The GAC filters, we think, will be delivered in March, and they have to be delivered before the roof goes on. So they're that large, so we'll do the roof after that. But everything is moving along on schedule very nicely. So the conservation restriction for well 10, this is reared its head again. And after last month's report, I know we were able to reach out and communicate with that team up there at the Office of Environmental Affairs. And it's in their legal review right now. So we don't know, it's kicked to that next level, but we still don't know exactly when we'll hear back from them. Hopefully we'll know in the next month or so, but until then I have nothing else to report, but communication is happening at least. For the pumping status, wells have been running 3 to 6 hours per day, and the storage tanks did not hit the low alarm level. For water sampling, bacteria samples are taken. All samples are free of bacteria. Samples are taken for contaminants and PFAS for wells 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 11. And all 3 sites had PFAS detects below the allowable limit. And we did take a sample of well 10, so when that does come online, we'll make sure it is non-detect, but we don't have those results just yet. Station maintenance, system maintenance is ongoing. We did have back to this page, Bortolotti repaired 2 water main leaks, Shore Road and Old Harbor Road on the same day. That was January 10th. And I'm pointing that date out specifically because you'll see why in the pumpage report. So here is our pumping comparison report. You'll see January 10th seems like it stands out there, 175% higher than that day last month, a year ago. And that's just because we had those 2 water main leaks. Everything else is pretty close to a little less than last January, but right in line with where we should be this time of year. This graph shows, again, the January 10th spike from the leaks, where the pink color is this year and the blue is last January. Again, the bar chart, similar information. Red is this year, blue is last January. And the spreadsheet shows the level of effort for each well. Wells 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, and 11 were all up and running each day, with the exception of one day there was some maintenance on the 17th. But the lowest day was 241,000 gallons, and the highest day was 1.23 million gallons. And here's a bar chart that shows kind of the same information. One thing I want to point out, though, is really appears that wells, the South Chatham wells 1, 2, and 3 are producing the most. But as you know, the Morton Road plant carries wells 6, 7, and 9. And if you add those three together, it's more like 8.3 million for their combined level of effort, where South Chatham is just under 6 million. So they do contribute a lot. It's just that they're separated because they're individual supplied. Just wanted to point that out for clarity. And this is the USGS observation well for Chatham. As we discussed previously, this is a little bit more reactionary to weather events and may not be a great indicator for the aquifer levels. It's still really concerning as it's still floundering and it hasn't started recharging yet. You know, I know we have a more active weather pattern now and there's snow on the ground, which will help. But it's concerning. Usually by the first of the year, we're starting to recharge, and we're still stuck in that trough there. And here's Brewster's observation well. Again, this is usually a better indicator of the aquifer health. And similarly, though, in previous years, we've had robust recharges starting in January, and we're into February, and we're still at the bottom of the trough. So time will tell, but it is concerning at this point. And here's the 5-year pumping comparison, January for the last 5 years. We are right in line with both gallons and pumping hours. So I think we're doing well for this month. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Shereen.
First off, the project on Training Field is incredible. I mean, I've driven by and from the digging of the digging to the construction site, it's just an amazing project. And I've watched it come up and grow every day, so it's kind of cool to watch. Just wanted to note that. And it seems like it's coming along just fine. I just want to look at the water table stuff and just maybe you can give us a heads up. You know, if we're not seeing an uptick by, like typically we see it the first of the year, and as we go into the summer season, and we're now in February and we haven't seen it move, when should we as a board start talking about taking measures or be starting to address some of the demand that we're going to see in the summer?
I think we still have time, Okay. Obviously, the state will mandate something if it's really critical. However, the ground's been frozen. There hasn't been a lot of recharge that's been allowed. And springs are typically pretty wet. So we've got several months to really see how Mother Nature helps us or hurts us. So, maybe I would say the late April timeframe. I mean, really, it's the irrigation systems and the summer usage, so we have time to react if it got critical.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Should we be concerned at all, Rob, with the fact that our groundwater level above NAVD is at 9.8 and Brewster's at 17.8? We're appreciably behind Brewster, if you will, on the y-axis.
Yeah, I think that's just the difference in the aquifers. I don't think that's, you can see where, even for Chatham's,
I mean, the way I read it, they're at 17.8 feet above NABD, whatever the heck that is, and then we're 9. So there's a differential there, that's all. And there's two different, on the y-axis, there's two different measurements, but
There is, yeah.
that one strikes me that we're a little behind there. We start approximately on the same, on the y-axis on the left there, but we end appreciably below. I just wondered, I'm not sure I really understand it, to be honest with you, but
I think it's more concerning is the distance between the crest and the trough.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, thanks. Good.
Anything else? Okay, thanks very much, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, public comments on the business agenda. Do we have anything here in the room? I don't see anybody. Do we have anybody online? Ms. Gibbs, I suspect.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Elaine Gibbs. Yeah, my comments are regarding the Monomoy Regional School District. Right now in this packet, there's just a short paragraph. My understanding is they're not going to make their presentation until pretty late in the process, in March sometime. But I did have some questions and comments. It does state in this that the overall budget is up 6.87%, but Chatham's budget increase is 8.81%. And it doesn't say what Harwich's is, but we're going to see an increase of $908,000. At the January 9th school board meeting, I watched a couple of them. That's where they were talking about the elementary school being, the preschool will be at Chatham. And at the time, Mr. Carpenter said, regarding it there, he saw it as a strategic opportunity since the way the regional agreement works, all expenses for it are at the school are Chatham's. So I don't know how he came to that conclusion, that he said that it was an opportunity and Chatham could support it and afford it. And I don't know where he came up with that he just assumes we can afford that whole thing. But apparently, we may not have known that when we were told the preschool was going to be there, that we would pay the entire cost. He also said that the minimum local contribution from the state has shifted assessments to Chatham. And that's not the foundation enrollment, which is rolling every 3 years. This is something different. So I would ask that we find out exactly what that minimum local contribution assessment is and why it changed, requiring Chatham to pay more. And then finally, there was a lot of discussion at several of the school committee meetings and a lot of concerned parents about the middle school and the work that has to be done and the mold issues and some kids that have been sick. And I think this is going to be a really huge expense for Chatham and Harwich to fix the school. I do remember about 4 years ago, Dr. Carpenter had actually said that he saw us having to replace the middle school within 5 to 10 years. And we're well into that now. And he never said it again. But it concerns me that there was an indication we might need a new school. And I'm concerned that with all the work that should be done on that school, I don't know how you can find out how much mold is actually in it without knocking it down, frankly. It's pretty scary to look at those pictures and see what's inside those walls. So I would hope that he gives us a really good evaluation of where we are in the school, how much it's going to cost, and what we're going to do moving forward. They had talked about, well, the children will be in certain areas of the school while remediation is going on in other areas. I frankly don't see how that's sufficient. I think this is a really serious problem, and it has to be a priority. You know, these are the kids. They're little. A lot can affect them for a lifetime. And I would hope that that goes to the top of our list. And that's why I have serious concerns about using all of our free cash on other projects and not what I consider probably the highest level of public safety that we should be focused on. I think this is going to be extraordinarily expensive and a very large project. They said all the windows will have to be replaced because the sills are rotted. That's where a lot of the mold is. And they will just have to keep going and test places throughout the building to see how much is behind the walls, because they've only done a few areas, and it could be the whole school. So I hope that it's, this is a huge budget, and, we have very little data right now as to what's driving these expenses and what expenses we don't know about yet. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? I don't see anybody here. Is there anybody else online? Okay. We will move to the first item on the agenda, which is considering the use of town property at I think I've got that. What, is Eldridge Garage next? Yeah, sorry. I'm not quite sure. No, it's town property is on my agenda. Yeah, no.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just bear with me a second.
Yep.
So the next agenda item is the town-owned properties.
Yes.
Basically the merchant's request for the annual year. As you all know, I am a merchant, member of the Merchant Association for years. Traditionally, most of the events have come before this board individually, one at a time. This is a broader annual year-long list, which I think we're going to have a healthy discussion on. So I'm going to tread a little lightly tonight. There's a lot of this that is kind of broad enough that I feel very comfortable participating. There are a couple items I may have to recuse myself or abstain from particular votes, but I am going to participate to the best of my ability, give my thoughts as a merchant, whatever. But I'm not going to recuse myself, which I traditionally have done on some of these items. So I am here, and don't be mute, too bad.
Okay. And, yes, sir.
Yeah, my wife Julie is also a member of the chamber, and she's also an artist that participates in Art in the Park. So in the interest of full transparency, I'm announcing that, and I do not plan to recuse myself. Thank you very much.
Jareen?
All right, well, I'm just going to say that I participated in the past in some of the events, particularly the Oktoberfest, or a business that I'm engaged with, and I just wanted to make that as a clear transparency.
So, okay, and I'm going to say, Dean, do you have anything?
Absolutely not.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say, I think, as I read the memo and looked at the recommendations and so forth, I think the item that will achieve the most rigorous discussion is the Art in the Park discussion with respect to the use of town property at Kate Gould Park. So I'm going to move that to the end of our list of items that we're taking up. We'll start with the Easter egg hunt, but we'll take the Art in the Park at the end. So with that, Ms. Muller, welcome, and let us hear from you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Muller. I am a director on the Chamber of Commerce and a volunteer on the Chatham Merchants Association. A handful of months ago, it was requested of our organizations that we appoint a single person as the one who sort of does all this stuff with the town. So for this year, that's me. And so the hope here is that we could do all of these things at once instead of me having to come before you 15 times like I felt like I did last year. So I will be back a couple of times because there's a couple things we can't do tonight, but I tried to consolidate it all. And so I appreciate each of you acknowledging your relationship with us. In my package that I presented to you, I did request that most of you or all of you stay for as much of this as you could. We value your insights, and I appreciate that you have all found a way to tread this conversation. If there is any particular vote that you find not appropriate to engage in, we completely understand if you abstain or recuse from that particular vote. Couple of things just touching. Angela Buchar, our Chamber of Commerce Director, Executive Director, was here a week or two ago presenting the budget for the year. And I was not here, but I did watch. And I echo everything that she said that day. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that I think to follow up on that. The question keeps coming up out in public and here about the two organizations and how we work together or not, and are we one or are we two? And the answer to that is a little bit nuanced, and it's that we are two that are trying to be one and are working towards that, but it is a process and not something that happens at the snap of a fingers or overnight. The Chamber's role is very much a 30,000-foot view of commerce in general, both locally and regionally, and working with the Cape Cod Chamber and all of those other things on both year-round businesses and on tourism and all of that. And the Merchants Association role is a much more boots-on-the-ground piece of that. So with some turnover in the last few years of both boards, and especially new executive boards this past October at our annual meeting, the two executive boards are now meeting more regularly. They are working through the process of figuring out which items belong in which bucket and how to make the two organizations one effectively. So it is something we're working on, and so we are one, but we work on different things. So anyhow, I just wanted to sort of echo that. And with that, I have our year to present to you. One of the things I wanted to highlight before we start is that our year of events that I'm about to ask you for permission for really is a focus on encompassing the whole town and encompassing the whole year. There's a lot of focus in Chatham on what happens here from Memorial Day to Labor Day, or even from July 1 to, September 1, because that's when the vast majority of people are here. But we all recognize, especially as merchants and business owners in this community, that things go on here all year, and we need to work on that all year. So we do try to host most of our events in what would be considered the off-season. We start with the Easter egg hunt, which happens in the spring. That is almost an exclusively locals event. There are some people who are here visiting family or relatives or grandparents or whatever, but for the most part, it's not something that like tourists are coming to. So that's a locals-focused event. Our block parties that we are introducing this year, we had talked about that a bit last year, will be during the high season, but they will be highlighting the various neighborhoods of the community outside of downtown, which is our focus on trying to pull in South Chatham and North Chatham and the east end of Main Street and the places that don't get quite as much attention. Art in the Park happens in the summer, but that happens in the summer because that's when we can make the most money from all those people that do come here. But then our Oktoberfest and our Christmas by the Sea weekends, which are our big signature events, also happen in the off-season. They're a great way of bringing people to town for a weekend to eat in our restaurants and stay in our hotels and frequent our businesses for the rest of the weekend outside of this handful of hours that are just those events. And as you saw in your package, we are in discussion to try to bring back some sort of a spring event, the Spring Fling as it was, or a Blessing of the Fleet, or some sort of pre-season event. We aren't ready to do that this year. We're trying to get our legs under us in this big organized process that we're getting better at. But the hope would be that next year we can pull that event off, and that too would be locals focused, but also off season and maybe bringing people in, because what a lot of the businesses are noticing is that our season is getting tighter and tighter and more people are leaving in the winter. And so we're really trying to focus on ways to keep commerce and keep business going, aside from those months that we know people are going to come no matter what. So with that, I have a bunch of requests for you. So the first one is our Easter egg hunt. It happens on the Saturday before Easter. This year, that is April 19th, Saturday. The event itself is very quick. We need a couple of hours in the morning to set up the park. The volunteers scatter all the candy and all of that. So setup begins around 9. The event starts at 11. It takes about they do it in phases. The littles go first, then the medium kids, then the older kids, just to make sure everybody gets a little bit of everything. And it's usually done within a half an hour, and then the volunteer crew cleans up, and by noon, the park is done. So that would be our first request. There is a permission to use the park application in front of you, and we'd love to keep up the tradition.
So I'll stop you there and invite questions from the board, comments. Can I get a motion?
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters,
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye.
Great, thank
I'll let
you.
you go on to the pumpkin people in the park.
Yeah, so I'm going to skip the block parties. I just wanted to give you a quick note. Each of the block parties will be handled by its own locality. If any of them decide to come before you for an alcohol license, I will help them through that and walk them through that and attend with them at that time, but we are not ready to ask for any of those yet. So we're going to skip art. We're going to go to the pumpkin people. This pumpkin people is a sort of mainstay of the fall season. It leads up to the Oktoberfest celebration. They will be installed in the park, I believe it's October 9th, and they run through Halloween, and on November 1st, they all get taken down. Local businesses sponsor the installations. There is no fee. It's just an artistic expression, and allowing some of the local businesses to entertain everybody. We do give out some prizes. This year, we gave out one for the most creative and one for the best in show, but they just line the pathway in the middle of the park.
Questions? Comments? Take a motion.
Move approval of Pumpkin in the Park?
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Oktoberfest is becoming quite a thing. It's been super well attended in the last several years. It is music and food and kids zone and all of that. Lots of permissions, several permissions associated with this. So there would be permissions to use both the park and the town hall lot. The last 2 years, you have allowed us to use the town hall parking lot. It has worked out fantastically. Last year, we were able to put the stage back a bit farther and spread out some of that, and it really worked out well. And so we would ask for the exact same footprint. We would follow the exact same parameters as we have the last couple of years. And last year, we had a little bit of a hiccup over an entrance fee. We will not be requesting an entrance fee. I am telling you right now, we will not be asking an entrance fee. We will, the same system we did last year of suggested donations upon entry. It worked out, not as much as had we charged every person, but it worked out enough. And we're comfortable with maintaining that system, and we will keep everything basically the same as last year. So permissions to use for both locations. The alcohol license I will be back for. The vendor who serviced the event last year made a point after the event of it would be easier if it were in their name for the paying the taxes and the payout to us, et cetera. So once I have permission and once we identify our vendors, they will probably be back for the alcohol licenses for that day rather than me keeping them in my name. So no alcohol license attached here. Permissions to use and entertainment licenses for both locations because there is amplified live music in both locations.
So questions, comments from the board? Dean?
Yeah, thank you. Kristen, just 2 questions. In the materials we received, the police department indicates that they would like to establish ground rules at the present time. Are you in discussions or conversations with the chief or others at the police department along those lines?
I have somewhat open communications with both Chief Anderson and Lieutenant Harris, and we generally meet several months before the event, and whatever they tell me they want me to do is what we do. Generally, it includes having well-defined borders. We've been using snow fencing for the last several years, and between the police details at any point of ingress or egress, as well as our own volunteers monitoring those locations, it's been working out pretty well. Lieutenant Harris was very pleased with the way it went last year, and she and I have talked about keeping a lot of the same policies in place this year. I don't foresee any changes in that.
Okay, the other question relates to something in your cover letter to the town under the Oktoberfest entry. Several citizens have inquired about the possibility of suspending the open container bylaw on Main Street between the two event locations. And you will go on to say that this hasn't been explored yet. You're not requesting that at the present time. But I do think that's something that I know as one member of the board would be concerned about if that request were actually made. I just wanted to give you that heads up.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Shauna last week about that, and because of the Mass General Law, that would not be possible, so we aren't even exploring that any further.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'm fully supportive of this. Thank you. I'll move approval.
Dean, I was going to say, the staff has recommended that we do this as two separate
Okay.
resolutions, so I would invite a resolution in the first instance for the use of town property, and they've given us a suggested resolution if you want to use that.
So moved. Is it present here somewhere? I don't.
Here, I'll read it. I move to approve the
Yeah,
use
go
of
ahead.
town property at Kate Gould Park, Chatham Bars Ave lot, and the town hall lot for the Chatham Merchants Association Oktoberfest from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 18th, 2025.
Second. I see it now.
Okay. All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Abstain.
Mr. Shell says aye. And then we need one for the entertainment license. Do you want to do that, Dean?
Yeah, I move to, that's the Kate. I move to grant a special one-day entertainment license for live amplified music for Oktoberfest 2025 at Kate Gould Park, Chatham Bars Avenue lot, and the Town Hall lot, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 18th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Shell says aye. Ms. Davis.
Abstain.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,
Christmas by the Sea.
I think what we have here, just to keep us
Yep.
from getting lost, the next thing we have on our list is the boy tree.
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's under Christmas by the Sea for me. That works. Okay, so several permissions to use for Christmas by the Sea weekend. This has been going on for a long time here. The couple of things that have been new in the last few years are the buoy tree at the corner of Cross Street and Main Street, which has become a photography hotspot the last couple of years. Everybody stops to take their picture there. This year, we did have amplified sound at the tree lighting ceremony, and that was great. So that's on here. So the buoy tree, Cross Street and Main Street, outside of the town hall on the corner, permission to install the buoy tree and leave it there for the holiday season. What are the
The
exact
dates we
I mean,
have are November
yeah, you have-
20 through January, is that right?
Yeah, those were the
January 20.
dates, give or take, that we did this year. Some of it becomes weather dependent, obviously on the installation and on the takedown, but those dates coincide with the dates of installation and removal this year for next year.
Questions, comments?
Move approval of the use of town property for the Bowie tree from Thursday, November 20th, 25, to Tuesday, January 20th, 26.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. Thank you.
Is Sears
Go
Park
ahead.
next?
Yeah,
the
Sears
tree?
Park is next, right.
Okay, so last year you approved returning the tree from the park back to the Sears Park Triangle. It makes the event much more unified. It allows people to surround it completely, and it's gone over very well. So we would request permission to use the Sears Park Triangle to install a donated tree and to have our lighting ceremony there again this year. This year's Christmas by the Sea weekend is December 12th through 14th. So, but the tree installation happens approximately the same time frame as the Bowie tree. Again, weather dependent, but it would be approximate, it goes up right before Thanksgiving so that we can light it after that weekend. And then it stays up until approximately Martin Luther King weekend.
Questions? Motion? Dean, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had, Kristen, I just had a couple of questions. Again, in your cover material, there is some discussion relative to having the town consider providing police and fire details free of charge, and then also sharing in the cost of lighting Kate Gould Park during the holiday season. And that's your single biggest expense. Where does that stand at the present time, those two items?
I haven't
I
asked
think-
yet, but I mean, I understand that, I mean, I've spoken to Chief Anderson in the past and Chief Tavano, and I understand that their details that we pay for both of our big events are not necessarily in their budgets that have already been requested. I don't know whether you all have the ability to do that or not, but it is certainly a very large expense for us, the lights especially, extremely, it's a $15,000 plus item for us at both the Sears Park Triangle and Kate Gould Park annually. And we fundraised the last couple of years to do it. Neither one of those events breaks even because of some of those expenses, but if we make enough money in Art in the Park, then we cover them, but if we don't, then.
Just wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
if we approve your request for the tree and the other items that are about to come up, that it's not implied that we've agreed to pick up those costs at the present time. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else? Can we get a Sears Park monument motion?
Move approval of the town property use at Sears Park for the Christmas tree from 4 to 9 p.m. It's being erected on Friday, December 12th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Shell says aye. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Abstain.
And Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Okay, moving right along.
Which one's next?
Our
Still
next,
have a couple of motions there.
Yeah.
yeah,
About the one-day entertainment license.
And the,
oh, yes,
And
I'm
the
sorry.
parking
Yeah,
spaces
Yeah, forgive me. Yeah, we need something for town roads for the
For the
light
kids'
parade
parade.
and the parking spaces on Main Street.
Do-
Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the use of, oops,
No, you,
I got you.
Hello there. Boy, he's quick with that.
You are quick. I move to approve the use of town roads for the annual Children's Light Parade and use of parking spaces on Main Street and the Town Hall parking lot as proposed by the Chatham Merchants Association on Friday, December 12th, 2025.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters,
Abstain.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. And then we need one more, we need an entertainment license for that program.
Mr. Chair, I move to grant a special one-day entertainment license for live amplified public show from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Sears Park Monument on Friday, December 12th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters,
Abstain.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. Now, have we covered, I think we've covered everything that's in the Christmas by the Sea stroll, unless you have
Well,
something
I
else.
do have just two notes. I will be back for more entertainment licenses as we identify performances throughout the weekend. When I spoke to Shauna and Kathy, I need to know what times and where the performances will occur, and we have to find the choruses, et cetera, that will be performing before I can apply for that. So once we identify those choruses and where they will be located throughout the weekend, I will be back for more entertainment licenses. My last question was whether it would ever be entertained that Main Street from Cross Street to Seaview actually stay closed for the duration of the stroll, rather than reopening as soon as Santa is delivered and the tree is lit. There's a lot of people on Main Street that night, and it might be really nice to allow people to walk freely.
Shereen?
I'm going to just put that as an agenda item request, that we talk about that.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
when I
that's-
come back for entertainment licenses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So you'll move now to the Art in the Park Summer Gallery display. I just want to note, before I give you the floor back, Kristen, that DPW and Community Services have recommended not to approve the application for reasons that I'm sure we'll hear about. But I'll give the floor back to you for your presentation on Art in the Park.
Okay, thank you. So Art in the Park is literally the only thing we do all year that makes any money. The money that we make with Art in the Park is what pays for all of the other things we do the rest of the year. And so we very much count on it. It's an extremely successful program. It's been going on for over 10 years. I think this might be the 11th, 2013 or 14 was the first year of it. So yeah, 10 plus years of an extreme, and Janice Rogers, who runs the Art in the Park program, is here. She has literally been requested by communities in other parts of the country to share with them our template of how we do this and how we successfully raise this kind of money. There's communities in Virginia that now mirror what we do. There's communities on the South Shore that do the same, and it's an extremely successful program. We engage local businesses who sponsor the artwork. There are, in any given year, 60 to 80 local businesses who are engaged in this process. That means there are probably 50 to 75 local artists. Some of them do more than one, so it's not quite a one-for-one. But local artists who do the work, who make great money doing this, because the artists receive half of the money raised on each shark or whale or whatever the piece of art is each year. It's a really big undertaking, and the people love it. If you sit in Kate Gould Park on any given summer afternoon around like 2, 3 o'clock, the sheer number of people strolling through, just families talking about which one's their favorite, and gawking online at what is being bid on some of these things. It's really a spectacular event. From the proceeds, money gets donated to the Josh Stello Scholarship Fund. Money gets donated from the Oars in the Stores program, which is affiliated with Art in the Park, to Monomoy Community Services. We absorb all of the fees of both programs on the Merchants Association side of the ledger, and the artists and these other places receive funds, separate from that. And without that, all of these other beautiful things we get to do all year and the ways we get to celebrate Chatham wouldn't be the same. We were just discussing a few minutes ago the lights in the park. We would love to share with the town in the cost of the lighting of the park. It's such a beautiful thing. If that is not an option, and we don't have Art in the Park, or we don't make a ton of money doing it, that's probably the first thing that goes. And I don't mean that in any kind of way as a threat or any kind of ultimatum. It's just the facts on the ground. When school districts have budget cuts, what's the first things that go? Arts programs, sports programs, all those things. So if our budget gets drastically changed by not being able to have our single largest fundraiser, then the other things, get adjusted accordingly with that. And we don't want to see that. We want Chatham to be beautiful at the holidays. We want Chatham to be, have these great events, and we want to throw all of them. But this program is very important to us in making that happen.
Questions?
Do you want to hear from Steph?
Yeah, no, I just wondered if anybody had a question about that, and then I was going to ask Rob if he wanted to comment on the negative recommendation. Sorry, while you're walking up there, I didn't realize Dean had his hand up. Go ahead.
I was just trying to lower it, actually. I'll wait for Rob.
Okay,
I do
thank
wanna
you. Yeah,
say
yeah.
something.
Yeah, Rob Faley,
Wants to
Director
see-
of Public Works. Yeah, I understand how popular Art in the Park is. Not trying to rain in anybody's parade, but it's the maintenance, it's the heavy foot traffic that we get through there. It is very popular. There's a lot of people that go through there, and it's all summer. So the grass dies, the ground gets compacted, and there's really no chance for us to reestablish that grass growth at the end of the season, because we're up to seasonal restrictions at that point. By the time the art's removed, it's the end of August. We have a short window to try to get the soil rototilled and grass planted, and then we're shutting the irrigation systems off for the fall. And then it's sparsely growing until springtime, and then kind of the activity starts all over again. So I guess it's the balance. Do you want the park to look nice in the center of town, or host Art in the Park? They're two different perspectives, but I don't think both could happen.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Really like the approach in our memo that the chamber brought forward about a notion of kind of getting together and thinking about how we use the park and where it should be maybe more of a hardscape than a softscape. Maybe we want grass down by the band concert area and on your way there, but the areas closer to Main Street where we do have Art in the Park and we have other events that are really close to pedestrian traffic have more of a hardscape. I'm thinking, gravel or even bricks or grass there, unless you, when I walk by, unless you get rid of the foliage, the giant trees that are there, I think grass in and of itself is going to be difficult to grow there, even if Art in the Park weren't there trampling the ground down. I'd love to have it all green, but I don't think it's practical, knowing that events like Art in the Park have become so popular and such a integral part of the community, and really, frankly, community building. It affects, businesses and artists alike. So it's really become a very, integral part of the community. So I would argue that we think long and hard about that first third of the park, whatever is used there, and kind of think about how we landscape that, knowing that we have shared uses. That it's not just, folks strolling on a grassy area under beautiful leafy trees. Mm-hmm. It's also businesses and many members of the community that use that space in different ways. And yes, it would be impossible to grow grass there given the amount of traffic. I get it. But I think we need to really think about how we're going to use the park and what we want it to look like.
Shireen? I'm going to let Shireen.
So the Art in the Park, I think is a really fabulous event. I was very excited when Janice first did this. I owned an art gallery, and we participated, and it was a lot of fun. And it became a tradition for the summer, and congratulate you on that. However, coming down the walkway at Kitco Park in September, it's unsightly. It's just unsightly. And hearing from Rob say that, the opportunity to replant, which I know the merchants have done before at different events where things have gotten trampled and replanted and the grass has grown, that's been great. I'm not saying not to do it, but there has to be a way to design the front of that area that would be pathways and natural plantings and things that would offer an opportunity for something to be installed within that, like, sort of landscaped design. Now, I'm saying that, I see it in my head, and I see it being a lot of money, which I'm pretty sure, the town's not really interested in doing something at this point, not to say that they wouldn't. But is that the solution to the problem, that there is a core group of people who look at a design and sort of says, this is how we can do it and make the park more beautiful and inviting year-round, and create that opportunity for visual art installations that maybe isn't just not Sharks in the Park, but goes beyond that for first night. I know that they tried to do something this year. I can see that as the solution. But if we can't get to someplace at this point, or I'm going to leave it at that. Let's just talk that out and see where we're at the end of the conversation.
Dean?
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo the comments that Jeff made, and also the suggestion that Shireen made just at the end there about coming together to try to come up with a plan for better utilization of the sort of the front of the park that abuts Main Street. But we do have, I think, the imperative that we have an upcoming season. I think the Merchants Association and the Chamber are going to want to know whether they're going to be able to locate this event this coming summer at Kate Gould Park. And as Rob Faley said, it's really a balancing determination here. I almost always expect that there's going to be something going on at that part of the park. And I don't really look to that particular location because I want to see or expecting to see nice grass growing there. I think the idea of a partnership between the town and the merchants and chamber to put together a committee. I know there's a beautification committee you already have. Maybe that's the vehicle, I don't know, to come up with a plan longer term. But if you step back and you ask, if we don't allow this to take place, in addition to the negative results that Kristen was articulating, where else could it be located in town? This is a central place in town. This is where most of the visitors are in the summertime, oftentimes to the misfortune of those of us who live downtown. But you know, where else can you put it? And it's a good event. I think everybody agrees with that. I'd like to hear from Kristen before we finish what the numbers are, or the proportion between sharks and whales, because you reintroduced sharks last year, is going to be. But I would support, at least approving it for this coming season. But I think with the understanding that we have some longer term planning for how to lay out that front area so that it doesn't look unseemly and allows for our town departments to undertake the necessary repair or annual renovation that would be needed under whatever scenario is developed. Thank you. So
If I may, I just a couple of thoughts of my own. That park, in my experience in Chatham over 40+ years, is central to the summer. And there's never mind what particular activities are organized there. It's a place that everybody walks through, wanders around. We had, the band concerts, kids running around, running away, which we had a couple of experiences with. But There are all kinds of activities there, and the idea somehow that art in the park, which does create an incentive for people to walk all over that front area of the park as they look at the sharks and the whales. Clearly, that focuses a lot of foot traffic right there, but there's a lot of other activity that also randomly runs all over that part of the park, as well as the rear of the park. So that's consideration number one for me is are we, singling out one thing without a real prospect of making a serious change enough of a change in the foot traffic that it'll really make a difference. That's one. And then two, I think Jeff mentioned it, when you look at the tree coverage, I'm not sure how ideal a place that is to grow grass in the first place. And those are things we could debate and should debate, but I think, as Dean is saying, to sort of say, well, we're going to give Art in the Park a holiday here while we find out whether we can grow grass there or not, that just doesn't seem to me a balanced approach to the problem. I really agree with what Shireen is suggesting, that we commission some sort of a group that looks at this for the future, and that we approve this for this year. But I'll let you say what you were going to say several minutes ago.
A couple of things. Now, Dean asked a question about the numbers of the sharks and the whales. Last year, when we reintroduced the sharks, we agreed to do it on a limited basis. You all didn't necessarily think we needed to limit it, but we decided we would because we wanted to see if that would play into the auction. Couple of things that we learned from that: it didn't necessarily affect the auction prices of the items. The other thing we learned is that a lot of the artists prefer to work on the whales because the template itself is just a better size and shape. What we would propose this year is that between the sponsor businesses and their artist, letting them sort of decide which shape they'd like to use rather than putting specific numbers on either. It will generally always be more whales than sharks, just because that's the artist's preference. We have also already confirmed with the Center for Coastal Studies and the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy that they will partner with us again this year to continue the trivia. That was a big hit this year also. We very much enlarged the size of the trivia questions and the items that the trivia was on. And I personally witnessed all kinds of children and their families running around and reading that information. And that's obviously always good when we're educating the public while we're entertaining them also. We would prefer to not have numbers limits on the sharks and the whales this year. If you all feel strongly about that, I think that we're certainly open to hearing what your concerns would be and would impose a limit if that's what you wanted. But from last year, it didn't seem like we really needed to, because there was sort of a fairly whale skewed interest anyhow.
I'm
Corey,
personally okay with
I kind of cut you off if you had a question there.
I'm just going to make just a couple of brief comments, and actually I'll start with, I don't want to come up with an arbitrary number for, whales and sharks. I mean, there's strong sentiment on, marine mammals and I think I don't want to arbitrarily pick a number. I have no desire to.
Okay.
I also have no desire to sideline this event, because it is successful. And I think the problem that we're having, and it's a kind of a slightly different conversation, is, what's happening to that area for any event. Because, this is a big event that I understand the foot traffic on it is very intense on the park. But if we were to have other events, it's going to be, again, wear and tear on the property. So what is best suited for that acreage of the park or the area of the park? Is it better to do something more hardscape? Conversation, what, how much, who's paying for it? But those are conversations I think have been being nudged for a couple of years now, so I think we should have them, frankly. I'm not gonna, sidetrack the Art in the Park for this coming summer. It's very successful. The turnout is amazing. I think, knock on wood, we've had less people being midnight raiders and doing stupid things. So hopefully that's,
Cameras help.
cameras help an awful lot. Cameras and social media, it's amazing what you can do. So no, I think, as far as this event goes, I'm supportive of it. But yeah, we need to have that deeper conversation of what is the best interest of the park for any event, so.
Shereen?
I just, as far as your consideration of what your artists want, I think it's not really our thing to say. One thing I do want to comment on, though, is, the entry to the park is, it's got the beautiful picket fence and the nice planting and stuff. Is there any way that you guys could consider not putting banners up across the fencing in the front and do something a little more tasteful about the signage entering the park? I just, aesthetically, I think it's
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're certainly open to that conversation. Two things I don't know that, for Art in the Park, there is a banner also.
Yeah.
Some of it is an issue with the sign code that I am actually in conversation with the Community Development Office over carve-outs for large-scale events around town. Right now, it is not, there's very limited things that are allowed to approve for us, and the banners on the fences have been one of the things we've been able to do. Signs in the park are a lot more complicated, and so I've talked to Sarah, and we're going to develop some sort of a working group to try to carve out something in the bylaw for town meeting next year, or this fall if there happens to be a special one. But yes, I take your point wholeheartedly. We don't love banners either. They just seem to be the vehicle that is
I
most
appreciate that.
allowable for
Thanks.
information purposes at this point.
Thank you.
And in regard just to everybody's comments about the park, I echo everything you say, and I wholeheartedly agree that it's a conversation that needs to be had. The beautification committee has lots of the stakeholders already involved in it. There are Friends of Trees, and there are Garden Club members, and there are all sorts of people involved in the beautification committee, and we would love to engage with the town on that conversation of what to do at the park, because we have already spoken to landscape professionals and tree professionals and started that, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to remind you, it is town-owned property, and I
Yes.
think this all should be going through the town as the lead when you are talking about a beautification project on town-owned property.
For sure, yes, absolutely, and that's what, so we were asking them for information that we could present to the town, and then there was a pause, and so we're just wanting to re-engage that process, for sure. We sort of went out to just ask what was feasible. We didn't actually start anything. It was like, what could we do to stop killing the grass? So.
And two things, if I may, I'm going to add the other half of it. I agree, it's our property, town property. But this is a particularly apt occasion, it seems to me, for what we blithely refer to as public-private partnerships. And so I would encourage town staff to actually incorporate your ideas, thoughts, offers of contribution, whatever it happens to be, so that when we have this conversation, whenever we have it on the subject of the property, it's got input from all relevant sources. The other thing I'll say is I think Chatham is distinctive for a lot of the things that we do, which attract people from all around the Cape, or indeed off the Cape, and obviously we, as indicated by the Art in the Park in Virginia or wherever, we have a profile and a reputation that really goes well beyond our borders, and I think this is an example of one of the reasons why, and one of the things we do that attracts people from around the Cape. So I think that's another factor that's relevant here. Jeff, did you have something you want to say?
I just think I heard a future agenda item. I mean, it's a long time future, doesn't need to be addressed in 30 days or anything, but I think we want to bring this subject back for vetting, investing and vetting here. I think it's a really good one. I think it's a great discussion, how to move forward.
Great.
Okay, I think
So
This
permission.
is right for, all we need is a use of town property resolution, is that? Okay. So I'll take a motion if somebody wants to make it, to authorize use of town property for Art in the Park.
Yep, I move to approve the use of town property for Art in the Park from Wednesday, June 18th, 2025 through Thursday, August 14th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters,
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think that's it, right? You got all of
If
the
you're happy, we're
applications?
happy.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the third reading of the electric vehicle public charging station policy and fees. Welcome, Ms. Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Katie Donovan, your Director of Community Development, here tonight for the third reading of the EV policy. The purpose of the proposed policy is to establish a framework for the town to operate, maintain, and recover costs associated with owning EV charging stations. When we've been before you in the past, we were here for more of a general policy. We're here tonight more specifically geared towards the Eldridge Garage property. Those EV charging stations have been commissioned. They're being tested this week and hopefully will be online in the next week or so, if not sooner. And so we are before you to establish this policy specific to the Eldridge Garage parking lot, but then we'll be back before you when additional charging stations are proposed and to amend the policy at that time. Just a couple of noted changes from the policy that you've seen in the past. On page 2 is the introduction of language directing the town manager to consider regional data to use as a basis for establishing fees. Also on page 2, a location policy, there's new language addressing the selection and identification of potential future EV public charging station locations. Again, on page 2, there, regarding enforcement, there's new language clarifying applicability of restrictions noted on signage and the ability to institute a non-charging fee after a session has ended. And then we also included a fee worksheet, including the average cost for consumers with the proposed fee structure, and those were all included in your packet as well. The fees that we are proposing for this timeframe for a level 2 charging station is 52 cents per kilowatt hour, and for the level 3 charging stations, it's 62 cents per kilowatt hour. There was some information provided within the packet showing that on average, what a consumer could be expected to pay. We've done some calculations for both in-season, when there is a fee to park at the Eldridge Garage lot, and also off-season, when there isn't a fee to park. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the board?
The only question I had was the rates, we've compared the rates to what's out there in the market.
Yes.
And 52 cents and 62 cents are really at market, or they're very comparable.
They are, and we looked regionally on the Cape, and I believe 52 cents is also the rate that Orleans is charging for their public charging stations as well, for the level 2s.
And I was struck, and I don't have an EV, but struck by the kind of the penalty to leave your EV charging for too long. That's fairly steep, and it's probably going to drive the behavior that we desire.
Right.
I think it's well done.
Yeah, actually, that prompted a question from, do I understand that whatever beyond the cost of the electricity that we're buying from whomever, the rest of the revenue, the net revenue goes to the town?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
To the general fund.
And it is, the only cost is the cost of the electricity?
Yes, that's my understanding. Terry Whalen, our projects and operations administrator, along with Kim Grant, who is our consultant from Cape Light Compact, had both worked on this. They weren't able to be here tonight, so I'm pinch-hitting, but I
yeah.
do believe you're correct in that.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
it's important to note that, and to reemphasize or emphasize, because we've had questions about it in the past, that the net does go back to the town, and that with the award of ARPA funds and the application of other grants, the net cost to erect these, to install these is minimal to the town. Can we make that statement?
You're talking about,
I'm talking about the charging stations themselves.
but the ones that are at.
The Eldridge Garage.
At the Eldridge,
Yeah,
we're not
yes.
talking about out
No,
in
no,
the
no,
future,
at the
just the
Eldridge
Eldridge Garage.
ARPA funds, grant funds, kind of net pretty darn close. We covered the cost of installation. And the net revenues come back to the town, so it's kind of a win-win, is it not?
Yeah, if that, but go ahead, Jill.
Exactly, that is exactly the case for the Eldridge Garage. Right, and this might be the last area where we would actually own the charging stations, where we're also considering potentially if we do other locations that we host, so that there's no upfront infrastructure costs for us, and we would get a portion of the fee. So this is, and to credit Katie, it's a fantastic project. The grant funds, the donor, everybody who's contributed to it, this is just the last step before it's completely done. And you're right, it's the cost for the infrastructure to install it and everything was, through the staff to get grants and through the donor as well.
Yep, super, thank you, good.
So, yeah, go ahead.
The only question I have, to try to think a little bit outside the box is we're talking specifically the Eldridge Garage property. And we're gonna continue to use probably the vendor, the valet service for parking and whatever. Is there anything in this document that we need to keep in mind that allows them to do their job as we expect them to do? And the question I'm coming up with is like, so if someone goes non-resident and parks their car and charges their car, and they leave for a long period of time, that they don't go to the valet service and be like, I want you to move my car, or, with those mechanics like that, like scenarios like that, is there anything that we need to have that covers the mechanics so that both entities coexist properly?
So if I could, I actually did reach out to Mladen from Chatham Valley
Yep.
to have that specific discussion. He said that he would be willing to train his staff. Should a person want their vehicle to be unplugged and moved, that is a service that they could provide to them. They would give the folks the opportunity, to not have to come back to unplug their vehicle. A lot of times they have the keys to the vehicle anyway, so that they can shift vehicles around as needed. So I think that's just part of the service that they would be providing, and he was willing to do that if a car owner wanted that to be done. If not, they would give them the information about the timing that they should come back and be able to move their vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
So I may be walking in a minefield here, but I just, with respect to the comments that Jeff and Jill were making about future opportunities for EV charging, I just note for the record that we had a proposal which town meeting declined to approve for EV charging stations in a parking lot to be improved, I think is the best way to put it, at the airport, adjacent to the airport, 95% of which would have been paid for by MassDOT and the Federal Aviation. And whether something like that comes back or not is obviously open to question, but there may be other opportunities similar to that in addition to having a contractor who effectively comes in and puts something in and gives us a fee along the way. So, Dean, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Katie, I had one question, and I actually have a proposed in addition to the policy. On page 2 of the cover memo, you referred to a maintenance agreement as the only overhead to recover. With whom is that agreement, or with whom is it likely to be, and how much expense does the town incur on that? Do we know at this point?
We are currently in the process of putting out a request on combis. It would be very likely to be a company similar to Weston and Sampson, who they were our EV consultant on this with Rivermore Energy. We would look at the level 3. It would be I think 2 different contracts, one for level 3 and one for level 2. The level 2 would be less expensive. The level 3s are just much more costly to operate. I don't have a specific number on those at this point in time, but I would expect that it would, be something, under $20,000 a year.
Okay. I want to just compliment you, and I guess as well Terry as the two principal staff people, but you especially because you were the liaison to the Blue Ribbon Committee that Shireen and I served on. And for the way this project has turned out, it is absolutely beautiful. And I hope those charging stations remain as pristine looking as they do right now. Probably not over time, but and the charging stations at the Eldridge were part of the recommendation of that committee that the select board endorsed. And I also wanted to note that the policy that you're presenting contains language that leaves with the select board the ultimate decision-making authority on future locations of charging stations, and I like that. But I think under the authority section, it doesn't expressly say that the town manager is the one authorized to set the fees. It's sort of implied elsewhere in the document, unless I'm missing something. And I would like to propose in the first line where it says this policy allows the town, this is on page 2, after the word town, I would put the comma and insert acting by and through the town manager, and put a comma after that, and then continue to assess and collect charging fees. I think we really need to expressly establish the town manager's authority to set the fees. So I guess I'll make that as a proposed amendment to this.
Great. I don't see any concerns with that from the perspective of the policy.
Yeah, I agree. That's fine. Thank you, Dean.
Okay, with that, unless there are further comments or questions with that amendment, I'll take a motion.
Move
Motion
approval,
to
Mr.
approve
Chair.
as
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
All right,
Second.
all right, so that came from Mr. Dykens, seconded by Mr. Nacastro. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell says aye. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Yep. Okay, next we have presentations on educational assessments. We're going to start with Cape Cod Tech.
Yes, Carrie Mazzaro, Finance Director. So as we continue on for the FY 2026 operational budgets, tonight we have Cape Cod Regional Technical High School and Monomoy Regional High School as well. We have Dr. Sanborn from the Cape Cod Tech School here tonight to present, and I'll just go over a couple highlights. Chatham's assessment for FY 2026, including their debt service, is a total of $587,949. And that is a change from the original proposed budget back in January at $604,253. And then we also have Michael McMillan here from the Monomoy Regional School. He's the business manager, and he'll be going over their budget for 2026. Their budget is presented at $11,217,418 what? That's an increase of $908,479. We'll continue with Cape Cod Tech.
Welcome, sir.
Hello, thank you. Bob Sanborn, Superintendent of Cape Cod Tech. I'm just going to go through our 26 budget for you. I will say it's been a challenging, I think, I'm not saying anything that not everybody already knows, is that it's been a very challenging budget year, in particular this year. So first, the work of our Finance Subcommittee, the members of which you see on the screen. We start our work in April. Our business manager, Aaron Orcutt, begins with our staff, and then presents the first budget to this group in October. And we have finished the work, and the school committee will be voting on the budget I'm presenting here in February, at the end of this month. So I'm happy to say that we're in an expanding enrollment time period at Cape Cod Tech. We're up 19 students overall. The Chatham enrollment has remained steady at 20 students. This is a breakdown of our 12-town district. We go from Mashpee to Provincetown. You see that Barnstable is getting close to its high water mark as the overall percentage of our enrollment, and you see Chatham declined a bit down to 2.9, just under 3% of our total enrollment. And you see the other towns in the pie chart. This is just a look at our enrollment history. We were at 616 in FY21, and now it's 681. And you can, if you look at Chatham in particular, the enrollment of Chatham has actually doubled since 2021. So that's, I think, a positive. That at least we look at it like that at Cape Cod Tech. So the budget I'm presenting is a 5.68, and I gulp when I say that, % increase. And I said it was a challenging time, and I'll detail why further in my presentation. But you'll see that I think we've been good stewards of the taxpayers' money for many a years, the last three being our three largest increases over the last 3 years. So that's going to be a $993,000 overall increase from the FY25 budget. So where does the money come from? Unfortunately, it is increasingly from the towns, the 12 towns. We're really just getting minimum aid from the state so far in the governor's budget, and I don't expect that to change too much. And we did have to substantially decrease our local share, which is also impacting the overall increase in assessments this year, especially the amount we're devoting from E&D. And I should say that I believe everybody has this PowerPoint presentation, but no? Okay, I have copies for it right here. They have the line item budget? Do they have the line item budget?
No, we don't.
No, there's,
Don't, okay. Yeah, if you could. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a line item budget in the back there, too.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry, I had plenty of time to distribute that. I thought Thank you so much. Okay, so, and really that line item budget is, the revenue picture is on that front page, which kind of details those three sources of funds that are funding this budget. And you'll note a pretty good decrease in our local share there, primarily from our excess and deficiency. And it's really, we've devoted a significant amount as the debt for the school was at its highest. We felt we wanted to vote excess and deficiency, but we do have to scale it back this year in particular. So that's a look at the revenue picture, which is having an impact on assessment. This 5.68% budget has an assessment increase overall of 9%, 9.74 to be exact. This is a history of that, and you can see where the steep drop in the local share, and primarily because of our decrease of excess and deficiency. We are significantly below our 5% that we are allowed to have of the following year's budget. So we are in the process of trying to boost our E&D over a several-year period. So just wanted you to know that. Overall budget being $18,467,000. You can also see that the state aid is comprised of state aid, Chapter 70, and also Chapter 71 as a regional school district. As you're familiar with, we also get transportation reimbursement, and we're estimating in 26 that that'll be $750,000. This is just a graphic look at the operating budget, and that assessments remain steady over the last couple of years, but we do have a spike this year for the reasons I've just stated. So that was the revenue picture. This is a slide of the areas that comprise the budget of $18,467,000. You see teacher salaries, the second most important people in our building, are 35%, followed by insurance benefits at 10.9%, and plant and operations. Throughout this pie chart, and I will move on to another slide that is in numbers, but inflation, and when you have a new building that is coming out of its warranty periods, you start to see the impact of service contracts on the upkeep of the systems moving forward. So that's definitely making an impact on this budget as well. So this is just the pie chart you just saw in numbers. So I'm going to skip over that. So here you'll see the decrease. Salaries really actually decreased as a percentage of the overall pie. So it very little, minute, but still not the driving force in this budget. And neither were benefits the driving force in this budget. As you see, it's gone down by 18.8%. However, I have to say, another decision we've made this year, which was a tough decision, was decreasing our OPEB contribution, which I'll discuss a little more for other post-employment benefits. So the big decrease there is our decrease in our OPEB contribution for FY26, and that accounts for that. But materials and services, transportation, we went out for a 5-year contract in transportation. That's all hitting in FY26. It'll be a fixed contract, so the next 4 years, that's not going to be a driver. But it is a driver for this budget. It was up, I believe, around 19% from the last contract, which you really need to amortize that over 5 years, however. But we're absorbing the cost all in this fiscal year, next fiscal year. And then a tiny increase in utilities and heating. But those two areas I just mentioned previously are the biggest drivers of the increases in this budget. This kind of shows that even more. We have decreased our capital budget for this year down at the bottom there, but salaries and benefits, as I've already stated, are not the drivers this year for 5.68%. I don't want to minimize salaries and benefits because they're such a huge portion of the overall budget, and collective bargaining was challenging. We completed our negotiations for 25 through 27, which had significant increases that we have not been accustomed to in the past, but not the major driver of the FY26 budget. Didn't help, though. And then, question?
Superintendent, what's the bump in the insurance cost, the insurance line, 36%?
One thing there is we under budgeted last year, so we had a deficit in FY25, plus we had the significant increases in mostly property and liability coverages.
Yep, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's primarily the building. So folding these expenses up again, salaries and benefits comprise, although down as a percentage of the overall budget, are 78.4% of the entire budget. So I'll stop there about the budget, and then I'll go on to the assessments. So if anybody has any questions about that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a handle on your explanation of the transportation. Are you suggesting that they're saying that the million slightly plus is an entire payment up front for 4 years of service?
No, what I'm saying is that the 26 number is absorbing the entire increase so for 5 years, you're going to see a number very similar to that.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So the assessments, we are already in the 6th or 7th year of paying off the 20-year debt on the school, which I cannot believe I'm saying that. And this is where I say, once again, thank you to everyone here who was so supportive and in the past, but also the voters of Chatham for supporting a school that I think you can be proud of and is growing in enrollment and popularity. and not in small part due to the investment that we made back in the really 2017 when the vote happened. So thank you again. So this year's capital assessment for the town of Chatham is $163,247. That's down about $10,000. And the operating assessment is up about $24,000, so you're about a net of $14,000 overall, and that's shown in this slide, with a total assessment to the town of Chatham of $587,949. This got cut off a little bit. On my last slide, OPEB I mentioned. If you go to page, real quick, on the line item budget, so towards the very end, yeah, it's on the last page, the back page, under insurances, the OPEB obligation, we had been on a schedule of where we had gone to a $300,000 contribution every year going forward. And that was through our finance subcommittee. We had ramped it up over a series of years by $25,000 and got to $300,000. But you will see that on line 270, we have decreased that by $210,000. So that's the decision that I talked about in the outset, and also you saw in the benefits line, is primarily the cut is that decrease in contribution this next fiscal year for OPEB. Will we contribute more if we can? Yes. Do I envision it? No. So I will say that we are well ahead of the schedule. We had a 28-year schedule back in 2000, I think it was, yeah, right around the time we joined the OPEB trust, of trying to retire, fully fund the OPEB liability in 28 years. And we are ahead of that due to the performance of the funds that we have in our OPEB trust. You see the balance there. I believe it's even a little higher today. That's mostly market returns, so your mileage may vary on every quarter reporting, but so we felt that we could take we could scale it back, not impact the overall educational operation in this fiscal year where so many things were hitting at once. So I just want to highlight that the schedule, it's still on schedule that we created back in 2015, but we are going to take a hit by not contributing that $300,000. We want to, in 27, hope to get back right to that, or over a series of maybe 1 or 2 years to lessen the impact in any one fiscal year. So,
Not a big deal, but you have 75,000 there, and your line item
sorry.
thing is 90.
It is 90. It is
yeah.
90. Thank you so much. I didn't update that slide. I'm sorry.
No worries.
And then I just wanted to point out our most recent, it's not a slide, but our most recent follow-up study from 2023. We're required to 6 months after graduation to see where our kids are. So, and in 23, we had 156 graduates, and we had a response rate of 90.4%. 141 students got back in touch with us, and this is a big effort of our guidance staff, our technical teachers, to find out where these students are. And happy to say that 46% of them were employed related to the program that we instructed them in. 27 to 28% went on for further training. A lot of that training takes the form of increasing their skills in the thing that we've trained them in. For example, going to New England Tech in Rhode Island to further their auto tech skills, or Johnson & Wales to further their culinary skills, are just examples of that pursuit of further education. And then we also had 19% employed, but not related to shop. But we only had 5 students who were unemployed, which is a little high for us, unfortunately, in this particular year, and 5 not in the labor force. So over 90% of our students, 93% of our students were employed in some way or fashion. So, and we also ask, and I don't have the statistics, but historically, our students stay on Cape Cod. When the question is asked, where are you? Now, this is only 6 months after graduation. And I'm not presenting this as science, because this is filling out a survey. This is what they say to our technical teacher or to our guidance department. But over the years, the numbers have been relatively consistent. The college go right into the workforce. That changes about a 10 to 12% margin either way in a given year. But I think it's a good measure of our students.
Thanks. Jeff?
Yeah, just how many, for that example, went under the 4 Cs, first question. So are you considered to be kind of a little bit of a feeder for the 4 Cs if you're going to pursue non-shop oriented further education? And then how many actually go on to 4-year, more liberal artsy types of?
Very, very small percentages go to the latter. Most of our students, if they pursue further education, and I think this is only going to balloon based on free community college. We haven't seen we're going to see the results of that in the study, or the follow-up study, 2 studies from now, from this one. But I think that's going to have a significant impact. And from our point of view, we do want to be producing students that are going into the workforce. But the allure of free could have significant impact on this follow-up study in years to come, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to do both also.
And a lot do that.
Yeah.
For example, the plumber that is in the field was taking classes in business or electrical, or it's all tied together.
I think the 6-month view is great. I think a longer view, year and a half to even 2, 3 would be also cool to do. Really,
it used to be a year.
to do.
1 year we tried the 3, like 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of years out would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Anything else? Dean?
Mike?
Yeah, Dean,
Yeah, just
sorry.
Thank you, that's all right. Just a question to Superintendent Sanborn. I may have asked this question in the past. Of the 20 students from Chatham, do you happen to know offhand which
You did ask
courses they're taking, which disciplines? I think I did ask that.
You did, and I did not bring that with me this evening, but I can send that along if you'd like.
That would be great. I'd be curious to know what they're taking.
Sure.
And I think it's great that that number has doubled and is seems to be steady right now. It's a great school, great building, and obviously they're getting great instruction. So thank you.
I think when you asked that question, another person asked, "Do you know the name of a good plumber?" So I said, "You can't find a plumber. It's impossible."
Or electrician either.
Yeah, exactly.
Shereen?
I just love your school. I think it's the most beautiful school that we have.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to walk through. What is the most popular course of study?
This year, it was marine mechanics. All of the construction shops are HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and carpentry are very, very popular. The health tech offerings and dental to a lesser degree, but always filling. I'm really excited about our culinary program. We've built it. I think they're open now Thursdays and Fridays. But call ahead. But you're going to be really impressed when you go to the restaurant. So I would really recommend that as the cheapest value in town, by the way. And I don't want to undercut Chatham restaurants, but you're going to love it. Every other Friday or every other month, Superintendent Carpenter gets to taste the food as well. So
Nice.
I think he can attest to that.
Thank you.
So let me do a little help wanted ad. We're in the market for marine mechanics. So if you got one, send them our way.
Okay, very good.
Thanks, Dr. Sanborn.
I will say co-op is a good opportunity too. If you're willing to take a student in 11th grade and a student in 12th grade, you could have a full employee and you get to test drive them through our co-op program. So that's something that if we could talk about offline.
And we've connected a
Good.
few months ago, so.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. McMillan, and I don't know, Mr. Carpenter, are you joining the, Dr. Carpenter, sorry.
Somebody else. Good evening, Select Board.
Welcome.
It's an evening. It's a late evening. I am joined by Dr. Scott Carpenter, Superintendent,
And we also have our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Robin Millen, with us as well to help answer questions too.
And so I think, before we get in and sort of prelude, we present this budget in the last few years with background of the end of the federal funding to support the outcomes from COVID. That we have the, not so bad now, but high inflation, and we also are seeing an increase in the needs of students and the cost of those services. At the same time, from a Cape Cod specific lens, we're seeing a tightening workforce, which is driving up the cost of recruiting and retaining staff. And that you'll see the sort of impact of all those factors throughout our budget. The punchline is that right now our draft budget request is $49,702,461. That's an increase of just 6.86% on last year's budget. And that breaks down to an increase of 1.6 million for Harwich, 5.4%, and 908,000 of 8.8% for Chatham. That's wrong, is it? I'll come back to that. So let me just say, sorry, there's a typo. It's actually, no, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm confusing myself. That's 8.8% for Chatham. So, this slide puts that budget increase in context. So this will be the highest increase the district's had since 2015, when really that was due to the high school debt coming online. So it's a significant increase, and it reflects the increasing needs that we see in the buildings. So I want to talk a little bit more about how that budget is funded and the assessments and how they've been calculated, and I'll talk a little more about where the budget increase is coming from. So how that's funded. So we're actually seeing the first draft of the budget that the school committee approved in January had our estimates of our state funding, and actually the state funding is a little better than we'd feared. So our state funding and other revenues up 7%. Regional transportation is up 29%. That's kind of a bit of an anomaly because we use transportation revenue. We get funding from the state for transportation, and each year we get to use the money we're receiving this year, plus any delta from previous years where we budgeted more or less than we actually received. And a couple of years ago, we received a lot more than we'd budgeted, a few years ago, we received a lot less than we'd budgeted, so the additional was only 19,000, whereas this year it's a couple of 100,000, so that's just given us a bump this year. So we have increased, so regional districts have excess and deficiency fund, really that's the amount of money we have left over at the end of the year. Oh, good catch. That's the amount of money we have left over at the end of the year. And we have budgeted $800,000 in excess and deficiency funds the last 3 or 4 years. And this year, in light of the increase in costs, we've increased that to $1 million to help reduce the assessments as they are. And that's how we end up with 31.5 million for Harwich and 11.2 million for Chatham. And this just shows you how that, the relative size of each of those funding sources, and then you can see how they've increased since FY13. It's a bit difficult to see. You've got that in your packs if you want to look at it, but I have sort of focused in on the increases since FY21. I think what's interesting here is that FY21 and 22, that was during COVID, we were coming in with quite low budgets and other funding was increasing. You saw relatively small increases for Harwich and actually decreases for Chatham at that time. And in 2023, we changed the regional agreement, and that's why you see that much larger increase for Chatham when each town took on the cost of its own elementary school. And in 2024, it was 2%, 4% increase, and then since then, actually, Chatham's increase has been higher than Harwich's, and in terms of percentages, and we'll talk about why that's happened shortly. And then you can see that the all other funding increased by 8.2% this year. And that little yellow line in the sort of the third up from the bottom that's our excess and deficiency. So it's a small percentage of the budget, but you can see it helps to offset assessments. Excess and deficiency. So each year the state, much like with free cash, so the state certifies our excess and deficiency, and once that happens, we can draw on that to help offset the budget. Now, if it's over if excess and deficiency is over 5% of our budget, we have to give that back to the towns in through this process of reducing assessments. So we actually are slightly above that 5%. We're not a million above it, so we legally have to give you a little bit back, but we're giving you much more than that, as we're using $1 million. And then just to compare where, the impact of the changes to the regional agreement. So by my calculations, if we had maintained the old assessment methodology, then Chatham's assessment would be $1.3 million less than it is now. So that's really that impact of, so it's actually, it's the impact of the elementary school, and also, the calculations that go along with that, and how we treat revenue and the minimum local contribution, and that is that net effect of those changes. And one of the reasons, so there's a couple of reasons why the assessment's gone up. It's partly to do with the assessment methodology. It's also to do with the minimum local contribution. So the way they assess, I don't want to lose anyone's attention, but the way the regional agreement works is the first thing that's assessed each town is the minimum local contribution, which are numbers that are set by the state, and it's based on foundation enrolment. That's all the students that live in the town that go to public schools, essentially. And if I can, I can't find the cursor. Oh, here we go. So if you see here, so that orange line is Harwich's foundation enrolment, and you can see it's just going down ever so slightly this year. Whereas if I come over to the same orange line down here at the end is Chatham's foundation enrolment actually went up a few. So the total, I think the net change was like +4 for the district. Chatham's went up 9 and Harwich's went down 5. So it's not a huge change in the great scheme of things, but when in the calculation, because everything's relative, when Harwich's goes up, Chatham's goes down, and vice versa. When Chatham's goes down, Harwich comes up, and that's why you see that impact on the minimum local contribution. And now, partly because of the way the assessment now works, we use those foundation enrolment numbers to determine some of how revenue and the minimum local contribution is split up between the towns before we assess them the value of the elementary schools. It's very complicated, but it does mean that foundation enrolment affects the assessments in two ways: one in the minimum local contribution, and one in the calculation of the assessment of the remaining funds. So that's kind of the assessments. Part of the increase is just is the outcome of the calculation and the percentage and the numbers that we're getting from the state, and the increase in foundation enrolment. It's interesting. For so long, the story's been flipped, where Harwich's enrolment was going down not as quickly as Chatham's, or mostly it was just not going. So this is one of the first or second times where we've seen the reduction at Chatham's been slower, or in this case, reversed. As always with these things, if this is the indicator of some change or anything like that, it's hard to tell, or if it's just a blip for 1 year. All right. I should say there's just one other caveat, and I'll mention at the end. So one of the other changes of the regional agreement is that we use the breakdown by grade of the foundation enrolment. We used to just take the total numbers, but because we have this elementary school and middle high school change, we have to calculate foundation enrolment by grade. We don't get that from the state, so I have to calculate it and then compare it to the state's number, and then there's always a little anomaly or two, so I'm right in the middle of now working that out with the state about why our numbers are just slightly off. I don't think it'll make a big difference, but that's one of the things that will finalise that figure. All right, so our budget. So I just kind of wanted to go through a little bit and give you a taste of why our budget is increasing and what's driving some of those decisions. I'd like just to give you this kind of overarching view of the budget. So this is the major accounts. So these are categories of our expenditure that are set by the state, and the nice thing is that means it's the same for all the districts, and so we can compare different districts, and it's just a useful way to consistently review our expenditure. So you can see, and I think Superintendent Sanborn has something similar for his district, and so you can see that blue line, that blue chunk is teachers, so that's 31% of our budget, and benefits and fixed charges is 19%. So there's this almost, what's that, almost, oh, that's exactly 50% of our budget is made up just of teachers and fixed charge and benefits. And then, staffing is around another 6%. The other big chunks really are pupil services, which includes transportation, and debt and retirement service, which is up there, and that's yellow, and then operations and maintenance. So year to year, so there's a lot, just to give you a sense of what's changed. I compare this to 10 years ago, just to see how things have changed in the last 10 years. When you just look year to year, it's hard to see how things are changing. So teachers are actually slightly smaller, 1% smaller, but pupil services and other teaching services, which is the bottom down, is a 5% at the bottom, which includes instructional assistance. So that's because we're seeing the needs of students is changing, and we need to provide different and more varied supports for students. And so that's increased the percentage that benefits and fixed charges makes up was 16% 10 years ago. It's now 19%. Debt and retirement service was actually a higher percentage back then because it included the earlier payments on the high school. Operation maintenance was still 9%, which I was surprised about. So that just gives you a sense of how things have changed from in this year's budget that we're proposing to 10 years ago. But how has it changed in the last year? So this compares each of those major accounts. It gives you the FY25 budget in the first column, or the second column, and then the FY26 budget in this third column, and the difference. And they're shaded, basically, if it's green, it's going down, if it's red, it's going up, and the intensity of the shading reflects the magnitude of the change. So, unsurprisingly, the biggest, and these are dollar amounts, not percentage increases, so the biggest increases, unsurprisingly, are in teachers and fixed charges, because those are the biggest parts of our budget. We're also seeing increases, our transportation costs continue to go up. So, and one of the things we're seeing is we rely more increasingly on out-of-district placements for students, both in regular education and in special education, where they can be services are provided that we can't provide in the district. It's mostly special education, but the transportation costs, transporting students to placements off district is increasingly expensive. We're also seeing other teaching services, and that does include instructional assistants, a BCBA position, which was previously funded from a grant, and instructional assistants. Both we have a new contract with them last year, but also we need additional instructional assistants to support individual students within the district, and that's driving that other teaching services. The acquisition and improvement and placement of fixed assets is down because that's just a shift in the projects. We're focused on debt, this big project at the middle school right now, and we had purchased a car and another item last year, and this year we're just hoping to purchase a new vehicle for the high school. I think those are the highlights of that. I mean, instructional materials, we are seeing an increase there. That's partly, and I'll come on to that. New textbooks for the elementary schools. A new curriculum. So, does anybody have any questions on anything so far? I know it's a lot. I feel like I'm throwing a lot of information at you. I can keep going.
Go ahead. Yeah, questions, some comments as well. So I guess the burning issue, when I read preliminary narratives that we received, there was a lot of action. I mean, we need to know about the elementary school. Why the large increase in the elementary school? I think that's really what I would like to focus on. And then there's a lot of buzz about mold in the middle school.
Yeah.
And what challenges we have there. Never mind for this year and going forward. I mean, these are difficult subjects. I don't mean to bring them up, but it's top mind on people's minds. It is. And parents, as you guys well know. And then on the benefits and certainly on the teacher salaries and benefits line, did we negotiate a new contract this year or last year?
We negotiated last year, so this is the second year of the contract.
Okay.
And so some of those increases, so one of the things that's happened is we took away 2 steps from the bottom, so now there's fewer steps. And so we used to net more, when somebody left and we hired somebody, often they were leaving near the top of the scale and we were hiring them lower down, and we were netting a significant benefit, and that was helping maintain our budget. what I'm finding now is, and it's a virtue both of that new contract and of just the labour market, is somebody leaves, we replace them with someone with equal or around the same amount of experience. And so we're not, it used to be a difference of $30,000, $40,000 when somebody left and was replaced. And now it can be the other way. It can be more expensive by $30,000 or $40,000 because sometimes we're seeing people with little experience leaving and being replaced by people with high experience.
And yeah, I think both things in terms of just, what we needed to do, to do right by our staff with the contracts that were settled was to go and make sure that they can afford to live here. And I know that town's having to do the same thing for, people that work in police, fire, and, other departments within the town. We also have, I think, this phenomena that Michael's talking about that, if I go back to when Monomoy started, you did have situations where I think younger professional staff, younger teachers could see Cape Cod as a place that they can lay down roots. So what we often find is that we'll have a vacancy, somebody will retire. And, we'll not have people who are at that lower, first year, starting teachers applying in part because they can't figure out how to make it work here. So you end up having teachers who are veteran teachers who may have inherited a home from, parents and now are saying, okay, well, I'll, shift my career focus down to the Cape. So that's, so we're ending up with not seeing this, this slight fiscal windfall when somebody retires because we're having to replace them with somebody else who's equally experienced. They're the only people, generally in that applicant pool. And or we're seeing some younger teachers who, if we do find that that teacher who's coming here, straight out of teacher college, if they meet somebody, they're deciding, okay, it's time to now settle down roots, but now can't figure out how to go and actually secure a house and look off Cape to go, build their future. So we end up losing some of the newer folks that way. But again, it's not anything that I know the town isn't also hearing on other town employee challenges.
We hear it everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're going to talk about school choice at some point as well, I hope?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
and
so.
then elementary school. And that's
Do you want to say the elementary
that's
school
really
will not
top
take
of mind, to be
mold?
honest with you, Mike.
So I'm not really going to talk about mold anywhere in this.
Okay, all right, okay.
But no, I'm going to so we'll give you the update on that now, and then I am going to talk about pre-K in a moment.
Okay, good.
Yes, so just in terms of of mold, there was concerns about just the siding creating conditions where there's low or concerns about low quality indoor air at the middle school. So we're in the process of working with our project manager, working with engineers with the architect and also working with a indoor air quality company that we've secured. So we went around and we just put out a report today that had sampling from a little over a week ago where we sampled essentially every fourth space all the way around the middle school. So we did 24 samples at the middle school and then did 4 outside samples. And also sampled, thanks to Jill and Joe Powers, we went and sampled 3 town buildings, including, this room and the select board room over in Harwich, the children's sections in both libraries, and a room in the, meeting room in the community center in both towns. And I think the long and short of the findings that we put out is that with the exception of 3 spaces at the middle school, the indoor air was no different than outside the building or any of the other town buildings, and the town buildings weren't any different than each other. So which is good news for the space and the libraries. There were 3 spaces that came back higher. 2 I would say were slightly elevated, and that's the slim gyms, the smaller of the gymnasiums, and an art classroom. And I think both of those spaces likely need to go and just have a thorough cleaning. We have it planned over this coming, next week is the February vacation, so we'll be focusing on them. One pinged way off the charts, and that was the library at the middle school. So out of an abundance of caution, I closed that down for this week. We'll be going back in on Thursday and sampling it. It's entirely possible that the sample was maybe an artifact of what an issue we had been dealing with. Apparently, where the sample was taken, it's on sort of a stand, that they're sucking in air, and it just happened to be that just adjacent to that were bookshelves, and on top of the bookshelves were books that had previously gotten wet that we were looking at disposing of. So those books are getting disposed of today. So when we go back in on Thursday, hopefully we see that the air quality is actually a lot better with that out. But we also have a full other mitigation plan where we'll be, there's some ductwork both in the Slim Gym and in the library and in that art classroom that I'm sure, it's ducts that haven't been cleaned out for, since the building was initially built. It's, so we'll be having, the ductwork fully cleaned in those spaces, doing other cleaning in the spaces to go. And then again, I won't be reopening the library until it tests back, back normal. But the long and short, the bulk of the testing was not what, there wasn't indication that there should be concerns about indoor air in the bulk of the spaces. And there's clearly spaces that we need to go and focus on, look at and address. We're also working with the engineers to do over February vacation drywall cores. So they'll be identifying nearly 50 places across the middle school where they'll be drilling in through the drywall on this side and taking out a plug of drywall where they can then go see what's the state of inside the wall. And so you can photograph it, you can test it, you can test for moisture. So we'll see, is it just an outside the building issue, or is it, is the issue permeating in further into the walls? We don't have evidence that's coming all the way into the walls yet. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't see that. They did do, if you go out to the middle school right now, there'll be, if you were to drive around it, you'll see about every 15 feet all the way around the perimeter, there are new shingles in some spots because they took off shingles to go test the substrate under the shingles to see are the boards in good shape, are the boards rotted, so I think what they found seems to be well within the contingency that project, that project estimate has been carrying. So, but again, I think the coring through the drywall would give us a better feel. Obviously, the indoor air quality samples we're going to continue, throughout the remainder of this year, just to go make sure that the air quality is safe, and we'll keep publishing the reports.
So I should say actually that under the debt and retirement, it's debt, retirement and service line. So that actually does include, that includes basically our payments on the high school and an estimate of our payment on a new restoration project, I guess, at the middle school. So we included funds this year for that. So that's why there's not a big ticket increase there. And we also restructured the finance on the high school, which saved us some money. So that's why you see that net reduction, because we're not really increasing because we already have money in there for the siding, and the high school payment went down. So that's a sort of net reduction, and that would, so subject to town meeting approval of the middle school project, that wouldn't change the budget. We would be able to go ahead with it.
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Scott. That was helpful. Assuaged some concerns, I think. And I think you're working with professionals, so they know what they're doing, so that assuages some concerns as well. Mike, I lost you on the debt and retirement service, that last part that I lost you on. What is baked into that line in terms of any building remediation at the middle school? Sorry,
there's just two items in there. It's payments on the high school.
Okay.
And possible debt project if we were to redo the siding and windows at the middle school.
At the middle school?
Yeah. So it's basically the middle school project, hypothetical, yet to be approved, and the high school.
So if I could just follow up on that, we've, in the course of this conversation, as you've discovered, you know, the expansion of the project, there have been numbers that have grown. Are you using in what's there, the most recent estimate for the middle school?
And
you
also
are?
a discussion with our financial advisor about how we would structure the debt if we went out to borrow for it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify,
What's the dollar amount?
We don't, it's not finalized
yeah,
yet.
yeah, so to clarify just the growing
Okay.
piece, I think a number of the select board came and toured over at the middle school over the last few weeks. And, what I explained is that, when we've done the initial, sort of feasibility studies, it seems that the real source of the problem is the windows flashing, that the building was not adequately flashed by modern standards. So to address the project and do the project right, the windows need to come out to go properly flash when the building's sided. We've got a 14-member building committee that's Ed McManus from Harwich is one of the co-chairs, along with Peter York from Chatham. That there's a 14-member building committee. They overwhelmingly voted to include windows in a project. They want to make sure that this is done right, that you don't redo the siding, and then the obvious problem that needed to get fixed is still remaining there. So it will probably take another 3-ish weeks before we come up with a dollar sign on what that is going to be. So we were carrying, we had an estimate in that feasibility study of about $6.3 million for just the siding, and that it seemed that carried enough contingency to cover the sheathing under the siding that would need to be replaced. It's now to look at, okay, well, what's the cost? What would the added cost be for the windows?
All right, and then,
Can I just ask,
Yes.
I know you're going to be making a presentation to us soon, within
Yes.
3 weeks.
that's the plan.
Okay, and I know that some building code issues were part of conversation
Yes.
when we were together, and you'll be
Yeah.
able to present all that to us.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right, so despite everything that's going on, we're still moving forward and teaching, the students that come through our doors every morning and ensuring that they're receiving a top-notch education and pushing ahead with their strategic plan to ensure students are receiving the learning and the support that they need. And that's driven a number of requests from our principals and our administrative team on new needs. So there's a lot of items here. I think there are a couple that I'd highlight are the new elementary math curriculum for both elementary schools. We are also seeing the last few years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of English language learning students, and that's driving the request for 2 more positions to support English language learning, one dedicated at the high school and one across the district, both to help coordinate the English language program, but also to be able to go to where the need is highest. So if we have a sudden increase at one elementary school, or if we have a sudden increase at the high school, or at the middle school, they can go to where that need is highest. And that we've seen that in the last couple of years. We've seen once, initially it was in elementary school and then it was at high school. So we would like to have that flexibility to be able to target that staffing where needed. We're also, and this is something we've talked about a lot, is that the needs of the students are changing and developing, and that's why we have a lot of money invested in professional development this year to ensure that we're able to provide, help our staff provide the services, our existing staff provide the services that our students need. And so there's curriculum development related professional development, as well as a number of different areas. And then the other one at the very end is a language-rich preschool program for here at Chatham Elementary School. And that's the two FTE increase, and I'm going to come on to some what's offsetting that in a moment, but that is one teacher and one instructional assistant to be able to support that program here in Chatham. And the opportunity for that comes from really, this slide. So in order to offset those costs, we have a number of steps in place. So I'm going to come back to the preschool program, but first, we're reducing 2 positions, one at Harwich Elementary School and one at the middle school, as classroom teachers, and that's driven by enrolment. So as classroom sizes are going down, we're able to reduce 2 positions. In addition to that, our preschool program has again shrunk to a size where it's difficult for us to maintain 2 programs, one at Harwich and one at Chatham. And so this budget includes having the entire special education preschool program at Harwich Elementary School. I think there at the moment, so that will require, I think, 1 to 3 special education students from Chatham going to Harwich. And so we will no longer have that special education preschool program at Chatham, and instead we'll have this English language program, language rich program at a Chatham Elementary School that will be able to serve students from preschool students from Chatham or Harwich. I'm just giving you a minute to let that sink in. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, so,
Yeah, please.
so are you saying that the district costs are offsetting Chatham's cost for the pre-K? That was one of the questions I think we were trying to get to, is the new pre-K program, or the enhanced language learners pre-K.
Yep.
The net effect is.
So the net effect for Chatham Elementary School is an
Mm-hmm.
increase in FTE. So we're reducing 0.5 teaching position, which is currently at Chatham to teach preschool, a special education program, and we're adding 1 full-time teacher and 1 full-time IA to run the language rich program.
And
So it's a net increase.
that's for participation by Harwich and Chatham.
Yeah, and we're maintaining the program at Harwich, which will meet the needs of both Chatham and Harwich students in the special education program.
How many Chatham students will be there, Michael, in Chatham Elementary in that program?
In the Chatham Elementary, that we don't have those numbers yet, because those are students that are out in the community who have not enrolled yet. So we are working on trying to get those numbers and talking to other early learning programs that are available, that are out there, but we don't know the number yet.
What's the net increase in the cost for adding I think it was 1.5 FTE at Chatham?
So that is around, so it's 150, so it's around $116,000.
Does that include benefits?
Sorry, yes. So including, actually, it's a little less because it's 35,000. So it's around $100,000, including benefits, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, so I just think it would be useful, Mike and Scott, to have last year versus this year analysis of the elementary school budget. So
Yeah.
we can see where the increases are and why.
Yep.
Because, the overall budget's up. I think we can take, a mini victory lap that our 3-year rolling enrollment's gone, it's gone up a little bit here in Chatham, yay.
Yeah, foundation, yeah.
But our costs are going up too, so.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in tandem with as a reflection of that increased enrollment. So I think it would be very useful to have a year-to-year comparison.
Yeah, I can do that.
And I can sort of share with you, what I had said to our own school committee, when we were looking at, we don't have enough children in Harwich and Chatham to have, to run 2 separate, these integrated special education preschools. So it makes sense to go and have that program consolidated. And the decision at the school committee ultimately was to have it consolidated over in Harwich. What I advocated to our committee is it leaves a preschool classroom space open in Chatham. And I think we're blessed in both towns that, that both towns have a voucher program to allow families to access preschool. But we still have a number of families who for whatever reason aren't aren't accessing a preschool opportunity for their child, so that, we need to find some way to reach families and have them, participate in preschool and have their children better ready for kindergarten, which research shows, it has payoffs way down the road. So at the moment, we're looking at, okay, who's out there that's not accessing the preschool opportunities that both towns have put in place with the vouchers, and how can we now use this free space to really, do the best educational good we can with it.
So just quickly, I've already talked about the debt, but we also have a number of capital projects which we're checking off with this budget. Continuing to replace carpet at the elementary school and at the middle school. We'd like to purchase a vehicle. So we bought a new vehicle for middle and Chatham Elementary School last year, and the one at the high school also needs to be replaced. And we continue to contribute to our stabilization fund and some other repairs. So these are just some other factors which are driving up our budget. We've talked about some of these already. Property insurance, that was something that came up in the previous presentation. Every year, our property insurance goes up like 15%. So, and we don't have a lot of options in changing providers. Those budget requests we talked about, staffing increases, we've seen health insurance. We had thought it was going to be around 10%. It came in at 6.5%, which is great, but it's still, still 6.5% increase. Building maintenance, the increases aren't as big as they were over the last few years, but we still see increased costs there. And now at district tuition, and that's for special education students who we're not able to serve in district. And we've just seen, we have a relatively small number of students, and so when one or two increase, it can have a big dollar and big percentage increase. And that's also putting pressure on the budget. I just wanted to talk one more issue. So as well as the state funding, there's another way that we reduce the budget rather than assessments, and that's through the school choice amounts that you mentioned earlier, and grants that we receive, and circuit breaker, which is money we receive from the state for reimbursement of special education costs. So what this chart shows is the total amount broken down by each of those sources, how much we've been able to use to offset the budget in the last few years. So if you look in 2023, we had a total of just over $2.5 million, and it was made up by all these grants that are listed underneath. So go forward to 2026, and we're using almost over $3 million from that to help reduce the budget. So this is us dipping into some of our sort of reserves or some of the other funds we have available, because we recognize that the pressures the budget's under right now. So we are using an increased amount of our school choice. We're using, back in 2023 it was 1.4 million. So that's the money we receive from the state, from other districts for students that come to Monomoy from other towns. So for instance, students from Orleans or from Dennis, Yarmouth, who come to our towns. Then we come to our schools, we receive funding for that. So we have a balance there. We're using 1.7 million of it, so almost $300,000 more. So we receive money every year. Likewise, with circuit breaker, that's money we receive. That's the second from the bottom. Circuit breaker we receive from the state. So each year we spend the money we received the previous year. So so this year we're actually planning to use the money we're receiving. So in FY26 we're planning to use the money we received in the previous year, right now, and some of the money we're receiving next year. So we're kind of using up some of that. What is a kind of structural reserve? We're using that up because we've just seen this big increase in special education costs, and we're seeing our costs across the board. So. So that's one way that we're helping. So it might not feel like it, but that's one way that we're trying to help manage that increase. And I just wanted to almost finish on just like a little look forward on what might be down the road for us. So our projections and enrollment. So right now, we are at the our enrollment at the high school is has been amongst the highest it's been for years, and it's kind of stayed up there. Over the next few years, we see that as some FY26 and beyond, we see that starting to come down. So we're in FY25 right now, so that 739 is the highest the high school enrollment's been And we see that coming down over the next few years, and that will relieve some of the pressure that we're feeling at the high school. Likewise, we're seeing the enrollment at the middle school coming down, and that's one of the reasons we're able to release a position from there. And elementary schools, it looks like they're going to come down. On this chart, it looks like they're going to stay relatively stable. However, there's limited information informing these projections because we don't know what kindergarten's going to look like next year yet. We do make some assumptions around the birth rate, like 5 years ago, but that's really risky because, things change in 5 years. But overall, we expect enrollment to come down. And so with that, this should release some of the pressure. So we see this increase this year. The hope, make no promises, but the hope is that we won't continue to see those increases. And then I just wanted to quickly touch on how our per pupil costs compare to other districts, to give you a sense of, because it's hard when you just see our number in a vacuum to know, is that the right amount of money you should be spending on a student? Is that the right budget for our district of our size? So this compares, so unfortunately for state comparison data, the most up-to-date information is FY23, so the state's not released all that data yet for FY24, it would be. And you can see, so Monomoy Regional School District is kind of, what this is the per pupil for every district in the state arranged in order of size. So the lowest per pupil is on the left and the highest is on the right. And the highest will be small towns like Truro will probably be high, and Orleans and places like that will be high. And then low will be sort of outliers. But so in the middle, so you can see we're like 2/3 of the way up. We're 121st out of 398, if you like. And you can see that you can see where the state total there, it's actually not halfway, it's a little further up, and you can see how we compare to that. We're a little higher than DY, and you can see Nauset. Nauset's a little funky because it's just the middle high school, but you can see that they are spending a higher amount per student. So like I said last year, I feel like this is a defendable place to be. I think it shows that we're right around where we should be. We're spending a lot of money, but we're spending the right amount of money for what our students need, but we're also being fiscally responsible for our towns. And real quick, just out of interest, this is where we were in 2022, much the same. And if you go back to FY14, it was still kind of the same. So, it moves around, but it's still kind of in the same region on the chart. If anything, we've moved a little bit down.
Those are great slides.
Yeah, they're brilliant, aren't they? I love them, they're so interesting. I'm sure they mask a lot of stuff, but it's just helpful to get like an idea. And so that's where we're at. So that's our 6.8% increase, or almost 9. So in the next couple of steps, like I say, I've just got to finalize that foundation enrollment. I don't think it'll have a huge impact on the budget. There may be changes to the state budget. So that's still, we'll update as we go. There's a point you just have to draw a line and go with the numbers you've got. We'll continue to present to both yourselves. We'll come back, because we're going to come back and talk about the middle school project anyway, so we can give you the updates on the numbers you requested. And then we also will, the school committee will vote their kind of final version of the budget on March 13th. Budget. Oh, the public hearing. So, and if we have the public hearing of the budget, that's a legislative requirement where we present the budget, and we sometimes have people turn up. But if anybody's interested in hearing this all over again, you're welcome to join us.
Jeff? Oh, you're good? Corey?
Thank you very much. That was
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Mr. Chair, Dean has his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dean, forgive me.
That's all right, thanks. I had a question and then a comment. Michael or Scott, what is the total number of Chatham students in the system? All of your schools?
I have that. Why don't you tell us your comment, and I will tell you that. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, he asked for the comment, Dean, as he looks it up.
Oh, my comment? Well, my comment was the town of Chatham is being asked this year to spend about $12 million for the 2 schools. The assessed value of the town is $12 billion. This is a very rough way of looking at things, and I don't want to give ammunition to people in Harwich who want to change the formula, because I don't want to change the formula, but we're paying 0.1% of our town valuation to educate our students, and I think that's a bargain.
Me too.
So the number of Chatham resident students at all schools is 355.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks
you.
very much.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
Good. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman. Would-
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. We are adjourned at 8:09 PM. Thank you all. Good night, Chatham.